The audacity of some of these companies. A company should hold a customer as the most valuable asset it has, period. Because without customers, you cannot generate income. You cannot buy all these buildings. Your product is essentially useless. 23andMe should take responsibility for the data breach that occurred on their server. So 23andMe recently came out. They got hacked, and they essentially came out and tell the people whose data was stolen on their server, mind you, that it's their fault. It's your fault that our data was hacked. Essentially, the problem is that some of those users were recycling passwords, and if you know anything about reusing passwords or using passwords that are not complex, easy guessable password, it's easy to guess, it's easy to brute force, it's easy for that somebody to get a hash file of that, because a lot of people use the same. You get the gist. Anyways, it's like you renting from a landlord, right? And the house that you're renting collapsed on you, and the landlord is like, yeah, it's your fault, but the landlord hasn't been maintaining this house, right? All the structure issues have been ignored, and now the landlord say, yeah, it's your fault for living inside the house. It makes no sense. If 23andMe had dedicated stronger password policies for their users, that could have solved that issue, right? Because they are the one who's administering that website. They are the one in charge of security of the web server, right? If they had said, look, you cannot use password with less than 8 characters, depends on what algorithm they're using to hash those passwords, whatever. There's so much more. My point is there's so much more they could have done besides blaming the customers for their data being leaked. And not even any type of data, it's their DNA data. But from what they're saying is that none of that was leaked. It's mostly like PII, like personal identifying information, like, you know, your ID, your birthday, and your social security number. Facing more than 30 lawsuits from victims of its massive data breach, 23andMe is now deflecting the blame to the victim themselves in an attempt to absolve itself from any responsibilities. According to a letter sent to a group of victims seen by TechCrunch, rather than acknowledge its role in this data security disaster, 23andMe has apparently decided to leave its customers out to dry while downplaying the seriousness of these events. 23andMe admitted that hackers had stolen the genetics and ancestry data of I lied. I thought it was just PII. So they did steal genetic information for 6.9 million people, half of its customer base. Like, these companies, they don't value your information. The only thing these companies value is the amount of money you're giving them, or the fact that they can steal your data and sell it. All that matters to them is the cost of acquisition. The cost of acquisition, ROIs. Those are the only terms that matters to some of these big conglomerates. How much money can they make off of acquiring you as a customer, and how much money they have to spend to get you as a customer. That's it. Your data is not important to them. Your privacy is not important to them. Like, some of these companies, like, I would never use 23andMe. Like, even with T-Mobile, they keep getting hacked. I am personally thinking of switching my phone from T-Mobile, but I have so much things linked to my phone. It's becoming so hard. All my MFA, all my 2FA, like, I have all my bank stuff is linked on my phone number. So it's a little hard, but I'm thinking of transferring my number to different conversation. The data breach started with hackers accessing only around 14,000 user accounts. These accounts broke into the first set of victims by brute forcing accounts with passwords that were known to be associated with targeted customers. Easy thing for them to do. I wouldn't be surprised if 23andMe has other vulnerabilities. Easy thing for them to do. I'm sure you've seen some website when you try to log in and they're like, you cannot use weak passwords. Apple is a very good one. Strong password recommended. Even if you try to type 123 password 124 or password with ones as the S's, it won't go because they are administering that server. They are responsible for the security of that server. They are responsible for the security of your data on their server. It's such a slap to the face for them to even come out and say something like this. I am very into data privacy. I think companies should respect the privacy that we have as human beings, not just as numbers. Because at the end of the day, I feel like all we are to some of these companies is just a big number. Why aren't they protecting us or looking at us as humans? Because some of these people, if you try to get some of their information out there, like I said, the CEO of 23andMe, he wouldn't like that very much. the vice president, the COO, the CFO, the CIO, the chief information security officer at that company, he wouldn't like it very much. Why doesn't he care? What don't they care about our data, right? It's to me, it's just such a slap in the face. In other words, by hacking into only 14,000 customers' accounts, the hackers subsequently scraped personal data of another 6.9 million customers whose accounts were not directly hacked. But in the letter sent to a group of hundreds of 23andMe users who are now suing the company, 23andMe said that users negligently recycled and failed to update the passwords following these past security incidents, which are unrelated to 23andMe. It's literally your servers. Users do share the responsibilities of making sure that, one, they're securing their passwords, but I put most of the blame on 23andMe because they have the power to enforce said security policy after they got hacked. 100%. They could have 1, 2, 3 click enforce policy for everyone to reset their password. 1, 2, 3 click enforce this security policy. They didn't do that. Why? Because they didn't care. It's not affecting the bottom line. It's not affecting the CEO's family. It's not affecting the C-suite family. Don't matter to them, folks. Xavier said that 23andMe is shamelessly blaming the victims of the data breach. The finger pointing is nonsensical. 23andMe knew and should have known that many customers use recycled password, and thus the 23andMe should have implemented some of the many safeguards available to protect against credential stuffing, especially considering that 23andMe stores personal identifying information, health information, genetic. That's all I'm saying. That's all I am saying. A company responsible for such a sensitive data, not even just like things that can identify you, like straight up like DNA data. They can't get any more identifying than that. You know what I'm saying? Like, why aren't there security policies like that in place already? That's pretty sensible, right? I would think. It wouldn't boggle my mind if internally their security policies are also very lax. After disclosing the 23andMe, after disclosing the breach, 23andMe reset all computer passwords and then required all customers to use MFA, which was only optional before the breach. In an attempt to you see what I'm saying? This is what I was just saying. They have all the power to make sure these things weren't happening before. Why didn't they push MFA beforehand? Why, especially the data is so sensitive? Like, to me, it makes no sense. They are completely liable for this data breach. If I was that judge, that's the one number one question I would ask them. Like, why didn't you do all these things ahead of time, knowing the amount of data, the sensitivity level of said data? 23andMe changes terms of service to make it more difficult for victims to band together. When filing a legal claim against the company, lawyers with experience representing data breach victims told TechCrunch that the changes were cynical, self-serving, in a desperate attempt to protect itself and deter customers from going after the company. If you use any of those services, like personally, like I said before, I would never use a 23andMe or anything that has to do with tracing my ancestry, because they already have my DNA. Anyways, I just thought this was like a very interesting subject, and I think these companies don't respect us as customers or consumers. They don't respect our data. They don't respect our privacy. The only thing they care about is our dollar. So the only way you can vote is with your dollar, how you spend it, where you spend it. If you care about that kind of thing, and you should care about it because it matters. Anyways, it's been your boy, the Yapper. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and yap on. Catch you next time.